All right, let's get to the Roto-World player news. Start off with Denny's man, Tyreek Hill. Pro Football Network's Adam Beasley reporting that Tyreek Hill, who has a thumb injury, will be ready for Week 1 against the Jags. With this concern over CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill entrenching himself a little bit more as wide receiver 1 after the historic season he had last year, Matthew, where he had 1799 receiving yards, was flirting with 2K for a little bit. Are you at all concerned, Matthew, that Tyreek, who's been dealt with injuries the past 2 years, already dealing with something now?
I mean, you don't love it, but, at least he's in camp the way that CeeDee Lamb isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, but, and he's got a good quarterback, a proven quarterback. So, I'm not that concerned about it. And I agree with what Denny said. Is you might feel better about him, especially if this CeeDee Lamb holdout continues, you might feel better about Tyreek Hill at 2.
Yep.
Assuming McCaffrey goes 1.
Yeah. It's also
it's
a thumb injury. Yeah, go ahead, Denny.
Yeah. Right. It's thumb. And so that doesn't bother me too much. 1,800 receiving yards for Tyreek Hill last year. He was 45th in pass routes among wide receivers. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about how good he can actually be.
Yep. No, certainly has the highest ceiling of anyone. Another guy who, in theory, at least last year had a high ceiling, was Jaylen Warren. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin said that Warren's hamstring injury is not a long-term concern, even though he's very iffy for the start of the season. Matthew, how do you view Jaylen Warren in this backfield, particularly compared to my man, Najee Harris?
I like Jaylen Warren. I like him slightly less than Najee Harris. I do think Najee Harris is a prototypical Arthur Smith running back and will be the head of this committee. But both guys are going to get a ton of work. And I hope that the fact that Mike Tomlin is usually one of those guys that's fairly accurate with the press. Shout out to Coach Speak Index, who tracks all that. But Jaylen Warren, who I think is probably the better running back than Najee Harris. So I actually like Jaylen Warren at cost just because he's dropping because of the concerns about the hamstring. So whatever, he misses 1 game. But both guys are going to be productive this year in that run-heavy Steelers offense. And so, I'm good to hear that maybe he misses 1 week, 2 at the most, but not a serious long-term injury for Jaylen Warren. I'm in on him this year.
Yep. Danny, where do you stand?
It's not as serious as it might have sounded at first, so that is good. It's good for my best ball teams because I have a lot of Warren. Hopefully, we're hoping and praying that he's okay. But yeah, I think it could be kind of a rough early season as they kind of make sure he's 100%. But over the long haul, Warren should be fine.
Okay. So yesterday we briefly mentioned this as the news dropped live, but the Eagles acquired Jahan Dotson and the 5th-round pick from the Commanders in exchange for draft picks. And Matthew, on Monday, before the trade, we heard you speak on Jahan Dotson and his struggles.
I have no interest in Jahan Dotson, and that's coming from me.
I don't know if the Commanders do, to be honest with you.
He's had a rough camp.
It's not
they're trying to figure him out in the slot. They're trying to.
That has gone south very quickly.
Yeah, it's very odd.
They don't have enough depth to get rid of him, but it is for whatever reason. He's had a bad camp. He's not playing with confidence.
That was a bad miss.
This weekend was better for him than it has been in a while. But this is freaking Homer Berry coming over and saying
that hurts.
I don't want Jahan Dotson. I don't want Jahan Dotson this year.
Well, the Commanders don't want Jahan Dotson this year either.
No. I mean, I think I was dead on except for the fact that I said they didn't have enough depth to get rid of him. Apparently they do.
Well, they may not. But
they may not, but they still got rid of him. As a Commanders fan, I'm also, by the way, I'm so bitter about this because, once again, just yet another awful draft pick during the Ron Rivera regime. They could have had Chris Olave. Chris Olave was there for them in that round, and the Saints traded up with the Commanders. The Commanders traded back a few spots. I forget who they got. Doesn't matter. That person isn't nearly as good as Chris Olave, and they drafted Jahan Dotson in the first round that year. And now they give him, they give a first-round pick to the Eagles for what's much less, a third.
Yeah.
They send Jahan Dotson and 2 7s for a third and a fifth, I think, or something like that. I don't know. It's awful. Whatever. Washington side of the ball. Here's what this means. Washington side of the ball means Diami Brown, who was a standout at North Carolina and has had some flashes in the preseason. He's going to be out there in 2 wide receiver sets. I think you'll see more 2 tight end sets as well. Mark my words on 2 things here. Zach Ertz is going to play a lot more than you think. A lot more than you think and probably want. It's going to be him and Ben Sinnott, and ultimately Ben Sinnott's going to be the guy you want. But early on the season, if you're in a deeper league and you're desperate at tight end, Zach Ertz is going to be more of a thing than you think early on in the year. I promise you that. And also, get you some Luke McCaffrey. Luke McCaffrey season's coming. I promise you that. Luke McCaffrey's going to be a thing this year. Like I talked to you about Tank Dell last year. Last year I said Tank Dell's going to be a thing. And everyone was like, oh, come on, Barry. And what happened? Tank Dell was a thing. Luke McCaffrey's going to be a thing this year. Mark my words.
Okay.
Luke McCaffrey's going to be a thing this year.
Lower shelf miniature ride or die Luke McCaffrey. All right, Denny, Bills head coach Sean McDermott said Curtis Samuel with his turf toe could play in week 1 against the Cardinals. How optimistic are you about Samuel's outlook this year?
Not very. I started the offseason really bullish because he's in that Joe Brady system. He had a really good season in Carolina in Joe Brady's offense. Brady seems to know how to use him, which is nice. We always like to see that for a player. But in the preseason and in training camp, honestly, he has basically been a rotational player with Khalil Shakir in the slot. That's very concerning for both players and honestly very disappointing because I wanted to see both of these guys as kind of the 1A, 1B in this offense as far as receivers go. Shakir has been very efficient when he gets the ball. The problem for Shakir has been getting the ball. Okay, he hasn't been a very good target commander. Of course, when you have Stefon Diggs in your offense dominating targets, that sort of thing won't happen. So I am bullish on Shakir. I like Curtis Samuel. If Samuel misses time at all with this injury, Shakir is a very interesting play in deeper formats.
Okay, you have a chance to win $1 million in the NBC sweepstakes on Yahoo Fantasy. Just download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion for additional details. What are you waiting for?
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.